Om Ganati Miranda Sangana Gana Salakaya Chaksurun Miritam Yanatashmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Shtapitam Yanabhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamanam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vitam Stam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Jayatam Sarito Bhango Mama Manir Matir Gati Matsavashapadam Bhoja Radha Madhuramonam Sriman Rasa Rasaram Bhamsi Vana Karsan Pena Shanopika Gopinata Sri Saram Divyad Vrindaranya Kapadrumada Srimad Radhagata Shima Shanishto Shri Sri Radha Shri Govinda Deva Pastadavihi Seva Manushmarami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Taya Cha Jagati Taya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Mangalam Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Guru Rajaja Mangalam Pariri Kaksho Mangarayatano Hari Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate Om Mahadevi Cha Vidmahi Vishnu Padni Cha Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Sare Sare Hari Pare Namastubhyam Namastubhyam Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhavinda Vaneshwari Vishavanasute Devi Pranamani Hari Priye Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Shaksha Parabara Tajmai Sri Gurave Namaha Durga Me Padime Andashash Karapate Gane Shaki Payasadaru Shantu Santu Varam Varam Mukam Kavi Bakariyan Shabarish Marane Pangagir Langanda Deka Karigane Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanumane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nevishesa Sunyavadi Praskada Desatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome back, Anjali, Rob. Wisdom Wednesday today. Good morning, Manasaganga. We're revisiting for the 5th time the 23rd verse in the 7th chapter, the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Good morning, Vaibhavi. Good morning, Brent. Thanks for joining us. Toma Dya Purusho Shakshar Ishvara Prakate Para Mayam Yadasha Chaktaya Kaivaryam Shitaratmani. You, Arjuna says to Krishna, are the original personality Godhead who expands himself. Eka Desha Stitoshni Jochni Bana Parasha Shaktir Tateva Makaracharam. God is one, Eka. Desha, he has his own abode, which is far away from this castaway, smoke-like byproduct of the fire of the spiritual world, if you follow me. And at the same time, he is everywhere present. So he's near and he's far. He's everywhere present throughout the entirety of the cosmic creation. At the same time, he has not lost his individual localized identity in the spiritual world. God's the glow and we're the glitter. Just like you could say the sunshine, the sun globe is the glow, and the little tiny particles of sunshine are the glitter, which are the byproducts of that sun. So Krishna is the glow, and he's also the glitter. He's the glow and the glitter. He's both one unique, supreme, original personality of Godhead, and he's also everywhere present through his Paramatma or super soul feature. Now, the question we've been wrestling with the last few days is that if Krishna is equal to everyone as the loving Father who claims all living beings as his children, not just human beings, but wherever there's life. People say the animals have no soul, but the word animal in Latin, animus, means soul. So you say animals have no soul, that's an oxymoron. Animal means soul. Anywhere there's life, there's animation. There is the presence of the soul, and each and every soul is claimed by God as his part and parcel. And he also claims that he's equal to every living being and that no one is his special friend. So then why, the question arises, does he take a special interest in the devotees who are always engaged in his transcendental service? He may be accused of discrimination, of partiality, but this is not discrimination. This is only natural. Any man in this material world obviously might be very charitably disposed, but he has a special affection for his own children. Or take it one step further. A man loves all of his children equally, but those children who are harmonized, who are in one in purpose with him, are special. There's a verse in the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Utamashtitam Kuyat, Proktakaram Adamashano Akarta Charitam Padu. It's talking about Yayati. Yayati was struck with premature decrepitude, and he wanted to continue to enjoy his senses, and so he asked his 4 sons if they wouldn't accept temporarily old age and give him their youth so that the dad could enjoy. In this connection, there's a verse, so his 4 sons reacted in different ways. The first son outright refused him. The second son was reluctant. The third son accepted, but with reticence, and the 4th son accepted with enthusiasm. The 4th son, Puru, did not even want the father to ask the question, could we trade? Could I trade your youth for my decrepitude? He anticipated. His father was approaching him. He anticipated. His father had been prematurely aged, so he said, Dad, why don't you take my youth? He didn't even want to subject his father to the humiliation of asking. So it says, Udamashiram Kura, that son who anticipates what the father wants. Just like we have the example also of Devabrata, the son of Santanu. Santanu wanted to remarry Satyavati. But if he would remarry, the condition would be that Bhisma would no longer be the heir apparent. He would no longer be the heir to the throne. He would have to, on behalf of his son, give up Bhisma's claim to the throne. He didn't want to do that, and so he refused. He refused this condition that Satyavati's father had put. But as a result of that, he was going around the palace with his feet dragging, all morose. Bhisma intimated what was the problem. He did his own research, and he went to that Satyavati father, and he gave up his right to be the king. He passed it over to his step-brothers, Vichidavira and Chitraganda, and ultimately to the others. That was first-class son is one like Bhisma, like Puru, who anticipate the desires of the father, and without the father even have to ask, offer it. Second-class son is after receiving the desire of the father, he does it. He does it enthusiastic. Third-class son, after receiving the order of the father, he does it reluctantly. And the fourth-class son is that who, having received the orders of the father, refuses to do them. And it says, that son is like stool. So even taking the example one step further, a father may have many children, and he may have one son who anticipates his desires. He have one other son, that son is first class, second class, third class, and fourth class. Naturally, he has special affection for the first class son. What happened in the case of Yayati was that he dispossessed his first 3 sons of their claims to the kingdom. He passed over them, even though, how many of them? Even though 2 of those sons were the sons of his legitimately married wife Devyani, Puru was the illegitimate son, the hidden son of the maidservant of Devyani, Sarmista. So Puru, in the normal course of affairs, would not have had any claim to the kingdom because he was not directly born from the queen Devyani. However, because of his wanting to support his dad, is loving his dad and anticipating his dad. It was Puru who got the legitimate heirship to the kingdom. And of course, the Pandavas were descendants from Puru. So even among one's own sons, one may have special affection for sons like exceptional sons like Bhishma and like Puru. And there's nothing discriminatory about that. It's perfectly natural. We had the example yesterday that even a man is generously disposed. There's no one more generous, there's no one more open-handed than God. Even atheists, there is no God. God's a myth. I don't believe in God. God doesn't withhold from the atheists shelter. He doesn't withhold from them transportation. He doesn't withhold from them the opportunity to have a spouse and a family. But he has special affection for those who give him attention. Yeyatam mam prapadyate tam stedava mamavar manusya partha sarvasha. In the 11th verse of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, whoever surrenders unto me, according to the proportion of their surrender, I will reciprocate with them. So when you think about it, the intimacy, the richness of our relationship with God doesn't depend upon God. He's always ready, always willing. He never steps back from us. He never keeps us at arm's length. It's we who are indifferent. It's we who treat God remotely. It's we who push God out of the core of our hearts and exile him to the periphery of our life. And if we want an intimate, full, rich, loving relationship with God, it begins with us. Too many of us are waiting for God to do something, for God to reveal himself, for God to make the first move. God's waiting for us to make the first move. It's like in chess. You have to make your move, then God makes his move. So he's waiting for us to let him back in. Otherwise, he is always poised, he's always ready, he's always eager. And if we do that, if we get into the middle of what God wants for our lives and synchronize our will, our feeling, our thinking with God's will, God's thinking, God's feeling, in that sense become one with him, not merge, not become undifferentiated, not become one with God, but to be in sync with God, to be of the same mind and have the same purposes and to participate in the mission of God. Nothing captures the heart of God like that. In the 9th canto, it says, Ye daraga putraprabja pranam vitamemam param itpamam saranam yata katam cham chakamuchate. Krishna says, pure devotees, my devotees, are so surrendered. They're so much docile. They're so eager and enthusiastic to expand the name, fame, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord for the benefit of all the inhabitants of the material world, that they are willing, in the course of wanting to please me, to sacrifice their homes, sacrifice their wives, to sacrifice their children. And it's not so much necessarily giving up all these things, but sacrifice means to make sacred. Fakya means to make, and sakra means sacred. So when Krishna says, my devotees are willing to sacrifice their homes, their wives, their children, their relatives, their riches, he's meaning that they Krishnaize everything. It's like the iron rod is dull and cold, cannot act like fire. But when the iron rod is placed within fire for a sufficient amount of time, it gets hot, redder, ready, finally red hot, and finally that iron rod acts like fire. So pure devotees, when it said they sacrifice their homes, their wealth, their children, their wives, their very lives, it means they Krishnaize everything. They put everything into the fire of Krishna consciousness and use everything for Krishna's service. They don't desire to shunt away wealth, property, family members for their own purposes and their own exploitation. They consecrate everything by using it in the service of Krishna. And Krishna considers that when such devotees have consecrated Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi Brahmagna Brahmaiva Tendika Brahmakarma, everything is Brahman, everything about them, their words, their mind, their thoughts, their gestures, their wealth, their will, their love, their possessions, their family, their house, their prestige, their income. Everything is consecrated. Everything has become Krishnized. Everything has become spiritualized. Everything has become Brahman. Because everything the devotees do is in order to honor the Lord. So Krishna says, how can I, in good conscience, give up such devotees at any time? When the devotees have given up everything for Krishna, how can Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, being the high-minded person he is and loving us as he does, not reciprocate with all the assets at his command? Krishna sells himself out to the devotees who have sold themselves out to the Lord. Another way of understanding how this happens is very nicely articulated by Krishna. Nobody describes the intimate relationships between the Lord and his devotees better than the Lord himself, because the Lord is right in the middle of that. We strayed, we deviated, we got off the path. Brahmanda Brahmite Kono Bhagavana Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Bhai Sarvayona Shukanti Murtya Sharma Tajma Parama Aham Vijapara. Although originally we're all divine, we appeared as sons and daughters of the world of the Lord within the eternal spiritual world. Some or other we got distracted, we lost focus. We ended up in this castaway. Just like smoke is part of the fire, but it's a castaway, more or less useless part of the fire. So we made ourselves, for all practical purposes, useless to the Lord by identifying rather with the smoke than with the fire. We peeled off from the Lord at some point in remote time immemorial. But the Lord never lost focus. Although we lost sight of him, he never lost sight of us. Never, ever, ever, ever. And so he takes note of it immediately when we start to reawaken our long dormant Krishna consciousness. When that spark indicates a willingness to get back towards the fire, to place itself once again in the fire and to revive its original fiery qualities, then the fire is only too willing to facilitate that return of the prodigal spark, so to speak. And Krishna himself, nobody has more poetry, has more vocabulary to describe the reconstitution of the soul to his original life of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. No one has more words, more poems, more verses dedicated in describing and honoring this than the Lord himself. And here's one of them, beautiful. Mayinabara hridiyam sadhavo samadarshanam. Sadhus are those who see everyone equal. They don't discriminate friends, enemies, and neutral parties. For a sadhu, everybody is a friend. Everybody is a brother and sister in the spiritual family of God. Now those Mayinivara hridiyam, they capture my heart. They capture my heart. Once the devotees begin to revive their original Krishna consciousness. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhu Kavanai Shravanadishud Karu. We are originally and eternally servants of Krishna, sparks from the fire, eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. And the way to revive that, to get back into the fire, is through the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We revive our original dormant God consciousness through the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. And one begins this process and becomes more advanced and mature. In this process, it says, Base Kavanti Mamba Satstriyasa Patopanim. Just like a very chaste and faithful wife always brings her husband under control by her service. We know that men tend to bluster and brag and shout and exercise strength and force to bring others under their control. Their voices are deep, they're louder, they have more muscles, generally they're taller, they have a thicker bone structure. So everything about the man is intimidating. And the men control pretty much by force. But what is the power of the women? The women have superior power, whether you believe it or not, whether this is politically correct or not to say. The superior power that God gave to women is through service. The woman, the chaste and gentle, soft-spoken woman, brings the husband totally under her control by service. It says an expert wife, an expert mother, an expert spouse is she who makes her husband think that he's in control when in fact she is in total control. That's the expertise of the chaste, soft-spoken, gentle wife. She brings the family members under her control. She makes them completely attached to her in the cores of their heart because of her service. So the devotees who serve the Lord in love and affection achieve a superior, they bring the Lord under their control in the same way that a chaste and faithful wife brings the family members under the control. The devotees bring the Lord to death, chases everyone out of fear of the Lord. The Lord is the ultimate force in the universe. Out of fear of the Lord, death chases everyone. Out of fear of chastisement by the Lord, the winds blow. Out of fear of the Lord, the tides of the ocean change and go in and out. Out of fear of the Lord, the moon rises and sets. Out of fear of the Lord, the sun rises and sets. Out of fear of the Lord, the seasons change. Everything is going on perfectly like clockwork, because even big demigods like the sun god and the wind god and the god of water and Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma tremble out of fear that if they don't do their jobs, what will be the repercussions? They are petrified of displeasing the Lord, and that's how everything goes on. And yet that Lord of whom Brahma, Shiva, Vayu, Indra, Chandra are petrified, that Lord comes under the control of his devotees because of their faithfulness, because of their not having any other Lord, their chastity in regard to the Lord, and most of all, by their selfless service. So the Lord aspires always to be in amongst the devotees. The Lord doesn't know what to do with himself. He recoils from the thought of being somewhere alone. He always hankers and aspires to be amongst his devotees. This principle is embedded within each of us. We're parts and parcels of the Lord. We share his qualities in minute quantity. So we don't also enjoy life alone. We are social beings. Many studies about longevity have concluded that the single most favorable factor, lifestyle feature, to extend the length and the quality of one's life is association. Loneliness is the single most lethal lifestyle pattern that one can have. People who don't have family, who don't have friends, who don't have people with whom to socialize do not live long, and neither do they enjoy their lives. We must have social connections. Arjuna makes this principal argument initially against fighting. He says, Name prapyasimi mama panudyach chokamuchosamini avapyabhumamasharam rajam suramaricharam. At the thought, Arjuna is saying to Krishna, to even think of having sovereignty over the kingdom, unrivaled sovereignty, even though these are my competitors, even though they're envious, even though they're conspirators, they are also the ones with whom I would want to enjoy the kingdom. They're my friends, my cousins, my relatives. Of what use to me is a kingdom without friends and associates and relatives with whom to enjoy it? The kingdom itself yields no pleasure. It's the enjoyment of the kingdom in society, in connection with friends, family, and relatives. And without that, the whole prospect of winning the battle and even eliminating my conspiratorial criminal rivals in this upcoming war, the whole prospect is like sand in the mouth. My mouth dries up. My senses close down. My body trembles. I'm overwhelmed with paralysis and despair at the thought of winning the battle and then being all alone in the royal palace. Arjuna does not want to win even an unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigods at the heaven at the expense of killing his relatives with whom he would enjoy such assets. And so similarly, Krishna says that without my devotees, I do not want to enjoy any of my royal opulence. Naham atmat manam vinasha, maham atmat manam data, saranam madbhakta vinasha. Satyam chatya kikam yad brahma yesham gatim aham prama. It says, without my gentle devotees who see everyone equally, for whom no one is friend or enemy, and who have me in the core of their hearts, and I have them in the core of their hearts, without them, I do not want to enjoy even the opulences of the spiritual world. Krishna is the glow, but the glow is beautified. The glow is glorified by the glitter, isn't it? Krishna's a diamond, but the diamond itself is not so strikingly beautiful. Put the diamond in a golden ring, and in that golden ring set little tiny rubies and sapphires and emeralds. Then the diamond becomes truly glorified, isn't it? The setting is glorified by the diamond, and the diamond is glorified by the setting. So the Lord is eternally glowing. Bahunam jamanamate gyanavam prabhadite vasat. After many, many births and deaths, those who are actually wise know that there is nothing other than the Lord. The Lord is everything. At the same time, the Lord, although one, advaitam achutam, anadam anantarupam, for his pleasure, because without variety, there's no pleasure. Without diversity, there's no pleasure. So the glow expands himself into the glitter, and they are eternally, inextricably connected. So when the living being becomes inclined to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he begins to glitter like gold. The Lord is the diamond, and the Lord is the diamond, the Lord is the glow, and the devotees are the setting, the devotees are the glitter. Now, how do we define a devotee? Who is a devotee? A devotee is a spirit soul acting in his natural, original state. Artificially, let's take the example of water. When it's exposed to extreme cold, the water can become hard and unyielding, like ice. But that's not the natural state of the water. Everybody knows that. When it's exposed to extreme heat, the water can become transformed into gas, vapors. But everybody knows that's not the natural state of the water. The natural state of the water is liquidity. So whenever there's not extreme pressures to become something it's not, the water is naturally liquid. And so similarly, in our natural, healthy, wholesome state of consciousness, a devotee is one who has reverted to one's natural, original, eternal, constitutional position as a servant of and consequently controller through love, faithfulness, service, and chastity of the all-powerful Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, the interactions, the reciprocity between the Lord and the devotees should never be misunderstood as the actions of the law of the karma. The same things may happen to the devotee that happen to the non-devotees, the good as well as the bad. The devotees may have apparent reversals. Devotees may have challenges. Devotees may have sicknesses. The devotees, like the Pandavas, had it all. Everything that you could have coming against you, the Krishna devotee Pandavas had it happen to them. And yet we should not mistake any of that as falling under the laws of karma. Everything that happens, occurs between the Lord and the devotees falls under the transcendental platform, because devotional service is not an activity of the material world. One who does devotional service immunizes one, crosses over from the mundane world of misery into the spiritual world where eternity, bliss, and knowledge predominate. And for such a devotee, when the devotee desires Krishna, then the Lord takes special care and encourages one's desires in such a way that one can attain to the lotus feet of Krishna and become eternally happy. In the material world, those who are separated from Krishna, everything they experience is as a result of the karma. It's a reaction to their bad choices in the past. However, those spirit souls who now are making Krishna-centered choices, they may appear to get similar circumstances and challenges coming against them, but the immediate cause of what happens in the lives of a devotee is not according to the laws of material nature, the laws of karma and this cosmic manifestation. It's directly the hand of Krishna. Take the example, many of you may have taken martial arts classes. One of our longest standing devotees in Utah, Jai Krishna, has been teaching martial arts up there in Orem for decades and decades and decades. Now, if you've ever taken a martial arts class, during the class, the teacher will throw you to the ground. He'll hit you in the ribs. He'll flip you. He'll put you in a headlock. Now, if you think, wow, this martial arts teacher doesn't like me very much. He's got a grudge against me. He wants to hurt me. If you think in that way, then you're not going to get any benefit from the class. You're not going to continue and persevere as a student. However, you have to understand that even when the teacher's punching you, even when he's flipping you, even when he's got you in a headlock, even when he throws you to a mat, even when he flips you over his shoulder, it's not that he doesn't like you. It's just the opposite. He's showing you special favor. He's teaching you, he's training you, he's molding you. Everything he does is for your good. And if you take it otherwise, you're going to miss the whole point. You're not going to become accomplished in that particular discipline. You'll never achieve excellence. You have to see that sometimes the teacher has to toughen you up. Sometimes the teacher has to give you life lessons, which may be hard to swallow at the moment. It may be hard to see how it's for your own good. Just the opposite. It may seem unfair. Why is the martial arts teacher picking on me? Why is he always calling me to the front? Why is he always throwing me on the mat? Why is he always punching? Because the answer is, duh, he thinks that you have the greatest potential. He likes you the most, and he's working on you the most. There was a story I heard on the KHKN radio the other day about a beautiful statue in a museum. Thousands of people came from all over the world, and they stood on stone tiles to marvel at this beautifully sculpted statue. So one day after the closing hours, the stone tile said to the statue, he said, "Why do you get all the luck? People come from all over the world, they pay a stiff fee, and they come and they ooh and they ah and they admire you, and they stand on me. I get the crap from the bottom of their shoes, dog dew and everything. And they're standing on me. They're disrespecting me while they're honoring you. Why is that?" And the statue said to the stone tile, "You remember when we were back in just having been taken from the quarry, and the sculptor, he started out working on you, actually. He wanted you to be a wonderful work of art. But you complained and you moaned and you said, oh, it hurt, and you recoiled and you shrunk and all. And finally, he just gave up, put you aside, put you in the pile to become a tile. And then he took me. And I realized that although it was painful, although it was difficult, although I didn't understand always why he was doing what he was doing, and at times it seemed very unfair, I thought, why is he picking on me? On some level, I knew that he had a higher purpose in mind for me, and that his cutting me and jabbing me was ultimately for my own good. So you couldn't take it. You interpreted the sculpture that he was doing all these things with the pick and the hammer just to cause you pain, that he had it in for you, that he didn't like you. And I had exactly the opposite attitude, that whatever he was doing, he was singling me out for special attention. He was making and mold me for great purpose. And that's why I'm the statue that everyone admires. And that's why everyone stands on you with the dog poop on the bottom of their shoes. Prabhupada said, darkness is a representation of the sun. It wouldn't be darkness without the sun. The very existence of darkness rests on the existence of the sun. But in the sun itself, there is no trace of darkness. So those who are not in Krishna consciousness, they see the darkness. But those who are in Krishna consciousness, they don't see the darkness, they only see the sun. For devotees, there is no trace of darkness, there is nothing unfair. They may not see a way, but they know the Lord has a way. They may not think something's possible, but they know for the Lord everything is possible. Those devotees do not see the darkness. Even in the darkness, they see the sun. And as the sun is full of light, only similarly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, beyond material existence, is full of bliss. And those devotees who have taken full and complete shelter of his lotus feet, they also are, as it were, on the globe of the sun. Here's an example. Let's say we get invited to someone's house for prasadam. Nice devotee, family, says, please come to our house for prasadam. In fact, September 11th, Divya Narayan, who does wonderful dance programs, she's been asking me to take lunch at their house up in South Jordan for years. And so finally, after this latest wonderful dance program that she and her students put on both in Salt Lake City and in Spanish Fork, I said, well, I have to show my gratitude. So September 11th, I'm going to lunch at her home. Now, if you go to someone's home and they feed you, and afterwards they say, how was the meal? There are basically 3 ways you can respond. And then I'll tell you about a 4th way. If you're ungrateful, if you're low class, you say, yeah, well, I think there was too much salt in this preparation here. Yeah, it was a little salty, It was okay, but could have used a little less salt. That is one way to respond. The next way to respond is the hostess asks, she spent hours and hours cooking in the kitchen. She had only your pleasure, your satisfaction in mind. She planned the menu. She accumulated the spices. She slaved over the hot stove, all with your pleasure and satisfaction in mind. And so if you're just low class, you pick out some little fault and expand upon it. That's one way to respond. The second way to respond is, oh, Mataji, it was such a wonderful meal. I love this and this and this. Now, the bitter melon was a little too bitter. But other than that, it was a great meal. So you talk about how most of the meal was really good, but you also bring her attention to the fact that one of the preparations wasn't up to your standard. That's a second way to react to the prasadam. Now, the third way to react is when your hostess asks you, how was the meal? You say, oh, it was wonderful. You don't mention the one preparation had too much or too little salt. You just say, oh, it was wonderful. The whole meal was just one of the best meals I've ever had. And she signs and shakes her head and she's so happy. That's good. I chose real gratitude, real high-mindedness, real etiquette. But there's a 4th way to respond, which is the way the pure devotees respond. They would say, thank you, Mataji. You made a great meal. I so much appreciate the time you took to plan the menu, to shop, to spy. Everything is just wonderful. It's just perfect. And in your mind, you're thinking she was responsible for 20%. But actually, Krishna is the one who gave me this meal. Krishna gave her the idea to invite me. Krishna gave her the income to buy the ingredients. Krishna gave her the skills and the discernment, how to spice everything and what to cook and how to comprise the menu. Krishna gave her the house in which we're now sitting, which shelters us from the elements and enables us to sit comfortably and take prasadam and get to know each other better. So the 4th way of responding is say, Mataji, everything was great. But in your mind, you're thinking 20% credit to the hostess, the cook, 80% credit to Krishna. That's the vision of a pure devotee. Everything comes ultimately from Krishna. There is no discrimination. There's no compartmentalization, departmentalization. Everything is by the merciful, sweet hand of Krishna. That means that all facets, all circumstances of your life are completely transcendental. There's nothing mundane about the life and circumstances of such a fully surrendered devotee. And every moment of every day is like a thrill for a devotee, because he's seeing what's Krishna going to send today? What's Krishna going to send this hour? What's Krishna going to send this minute? It is all transcendental. It is not at all static, because Krishna is a conscious person. He loves diversity. He has a sense of humor. He's unpredictable. He's dynamic. Krishna has a million ways to teach you what you need to be taught. He has a million ways to mold you in the way that you need to be molded. He has a million ways to get you to where you need to be. And none of them are predictable. None of them are mundane. Every one of them is an adventure in and of itself. Krishna is never straightforward. He's never predictable. He's never mundane. He's got that mischievous smile, and we never know what he's going to pull out of his hat, what he's got up his sleeve. But one thing we can be totally assured of, he loves us. He wants the best for us. And even when we don't understand what's happening, even when it doesn't make sense for us, we can be assured that God is on his throne. He's in complete control. He never makes any mistakes, and he loves us. Here in Spanish Fork, we get lots of visitors, some of them from all over the world. This is known for being 90% Mormon, particularly down here in Utah Valley. And people see our billboards on the freeway, Krishna Temple, next exit. They're intrigued, they're beguiled, curious, and so they exit the freeway. They drive the 3 miles to where the temple is. Actually, the temple's visible from I-15. They come through the door, and they have this incredible look on their face. They say, how in the world did this temple get here? How in the world did a world-class Krishna temple get built, get founded in Spanish Fork, Utah, an area that's 90% another religion? There are 3 things that make the temple attractive. One is the beautiful 15-acre piece of property that's on a hilltop. The other is the building itself. Bhai Bobby did a wonderful job. One visitor who's been to all the ISKCON temples in America said the other day that this is the most beautiful ISKCON temple in America. So it is the property on which the temple is located, overlooking the South Utah Valley from a hilltop. It is the stunning architecture, which Bhai Bobby designed. But the third feature is its very unlikeliness. No one would have expected a Krishna temple to be in Mormon, Utah. Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, New York, Cleveland, Miami. Yes, 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 yes. Check the box, check the box, check. Not unexpected, but Spanish Fork, Utah is probably the least likely place that you would predict there be a Krishna temple. And so people say, how in the world did this temple get here? And conveniently, there's a picture that Bhai Bobby also did of Krishna on the wall there with the peacock feather jauntily tucked into his mukut, his crown, the flute to his lips. He's standing in threefold bending way, and he's got this incredible twinkle in his eye. He's got this little mischievous glint in his eye, and they say, here is the God that we worship. He loves a prank. He has a sense of humor. He established a temple in Spanish Fork, Utah, because he wanted to prove that he could do it. And the road to our establishing this temple was not a straight road. We did not go from A to B to C. We came here broke. We came here bankrupt. We came here without any money, without any prospects. We came here basically in the natural. There was no hope for us even to be able to maintain, to remain here. What to speak of remain for 40 plus years. build not one but two temples, and continue to run Cage Quinn radio station. That Krishna, who pervades and supports the entire material and spiritual worlds, is himself distinct from material nature. We, in our lives and our ambitions and our goals and our appetites, become complicated by our entanglement in the modes of material nature. The modes of material nature are there particularly to confine us, to restrict us, to bind us, to enslave us, to condition life. And as long as we're acting in the modes of material nature, there are limited consequences. There are limited outcomes from our activities. We have an ambition, we have a dream, we have a desire to enrich ourselves, to improve ourselves within the confines of material nature. It's material nature's job to make that as difficult and as painstaking as possible. And even if we are to achieve our heart's desire, material nature ensures that it's frustrated. It's not all that we had hoped to be. So the trick is, the key is, don't limit yourself to the modes of material nature. Trigunyabhishavana nistriga. It's poisonous to identify with the modes of material nature. It's poisonous to conceive and concoct your dreams based on the three modes of material nature. Krishna is calling. Krishna is on bended knee. Krishna is canvassing. Connect yourself not to the energy, but to the energetic source. You're glitter, but your glitter has no meaning unless you're connected to the glow. He is Parama. He is the chief living being. He is the supreme personality of God. He is absolute. He has multiple, manifold energies. And these energies create diversity. They create magic. He manifests, maintains, and destroys this material world. All he has to do is glance in your direction. And with his favorable glance in your direction, nothing is impossible. There are no limits to what you can do. There are no limits to where you can go. There are no limits to what you can achieve once you connect yourself in loving devotional service. Once you become a faithful, chaste, loving servant of the Lord, you're leveraged into a position of power which is even greater than that of the Supreme Personality of God himself. So I think that'll be a good note on which to leave everyone today on Wisdom Wednesday. I'll ask you for your thoughts in a moment, Rob, but let me thank Anjali for jumping on board first. I think she was there before anybody else. And then Manasaganga and Brent checked in, then by Bobby, then Bear. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Bear. Good morning. Jay is going to get initiated in October. That's a wonderful bit of news. Govinda Dev, we're applying for his second initiation here in Salt Lake City. Manasaganga made a comment that she thought that the class was very nicely explained, very easily understandable. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for your feedback. I always like it when you make a comment, you ask a question. Kara, Jay's wife, joined with a Hari bowl as well. Gene, I don't think he's missed a class at all in 3 years. Wall-to-wall nectar this morning. I felt that way. I felt stimulated and inspired throughout the whole morning. Rob, any comments at all? I've got my pen here.
It was a wonderful class this morning. I have to agree with everyone. And I had quite a few takeaways today. First is Krishna is your life. And another one is don't be alone, give Krishna a home.
I'm writing down here.
And kind of expounded on that one is don't go through life alone, give Krishna your life, your wife, and home.
Oh my gosh. Can you say that one again?
Don't go through life alone, give Krishna your life, your wife, and home. And be devoted and vaccinate against Maya.
Be devoted and vaccinate against Maya.
Yes. And Maya is the disease, Krishna is the cure.
Maya is the disease, Krishna is the cure.
And
yeah, go ahead.
one more. Don't rave and rant, pray and chant.
Don't rave and rant, pray and chant. The beauty about all these phrases is it just helps you remember. One kind of nicely poetic, has a certain rhythm and ring to it. It can trigger a whole section of the philosophy, and that's what we aspire for. We aspire that everything we see, feel, touch, taste, and smell, some or other trigger our remembrance of Krishna. And that's the life of a pure devotee. There isn't anything in this material world which does not remind one of Krishna. I heard someone ask the question, does the mango remind us of its reflection, or does the reflection remind us of the mango? You understand? When we see a mango, are we reminded of the reflection of the mango? No. But when we see the reflection of the mango, we're reminded of the mango, isn't it? So for a pure devotee, this material world, although it's inferior energy of the Lord, it's temporary, it does come from the Lord. It represents the spiritual world, which also has lakes and buildings and clouds and trees, flowers. And so for a pure devotee, this reflection world, everything about this material world reminds us of the spiritual world. When you're in the spiritual world, you're not thinking of the reflection of the spiritual world. You're not thinking of the material world. When you're in the spiritual world, you're not thinking of the material world, right? But when you're in the material world, which is the reflection, then perfect consciousness, pure consciousness, is to be reminded of the spiritual world by everything about the material world. That is pure Krishna consciousness. So thank you. I wouldn't have thought of that or said that had it not been for your little phrase there, Ra. Thank you. Last chance to make a comment, which I'm going to share, or push those little likes, those little hearts, make a small, short fireworks display here as we're signing off. This has been Wisdom Wednesday. I enjoyed subject matter. I enjoyed sharing it with you. I enjoyed the fact that you showed up and spent this time with me. And I'll look forward to our reconvening on the weekend, if you like, for the Sunday night talk, as well as next Motivational Monday, Transcendental Tuesday, and Wisdom Wednesday. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.